Daddy, please, you need to come home. Those were the first words out of my daughter's mouth when she Skyped me at my duty station in Afghanistan. What's wrong, baby? It's Mom, Dad. Even with the poor video quality, I could tell she was in tears. What's wrong with Mom? She's seeing another man. My heart stopped. My beautiful wife of 18 years had always been so dedicated to me and Stacy, our daughter. Honey, how do you know that? Surely you're mistaken. Dad, she's out with him 2 or 3 nights a week. Sometimes she doesn't come home till 2 or 3 in the morning. This morning, she didn't come home till almost 7. Dad, I'm scared. I choked down the bile that had risen into my throat. Do you know who the man is, Stacy? I think his name is Donald something. Donald Connolly? Yes, that's him. I've only seen him once when he picked Mom up. Tall, kind of skinny guy with short black and gray hair. If that's who it is, he's the mayor. He drives a big fancy car, and sometimes he picks Mom up in a limo. That made sense. Kathy had worked on his election campaign. Maybe she was just going with him to party or something. But if that's the case, why is she coming home so late? I need you here, Daddy. Come home, please. Stacy begged me. Honey, I'll see what I can do, but whatever you do, don't say anything to your mom. I won't, Dad, but please hurry before something really bad happens. I'll do my best. I love you, Stacy. Love you too, Dad. My name is Robert Crawford. I'm 42 years old and a design specialist for a large electronics firm. I'm also a major in the National Guard, and that's why I'm currently on a year-long assignment in Afghanistan where I serve on the command staff. I've been married to the love of my life, Kathy, for 18 years, and the fruit of our union is our awesome 15-year-old daughter, Stacy. Kathy is 40, but looks even younger. She's the most beautiful woman I've ever known, 5 feet 6 inches, terrific body that actually improved after she gave birth to our daughter. Her dark brown hair down to her shoulders and warm brown eyes that always sparkle when she smiles, and she smiles all the time. I could honestly say our marriage has been rock solid, even when I've been deployed. Our time together has been warm and loving, our sex, hot and always satisfying. I've never had a doubt about her fidelity, nor she mine. So what happened? I didn't have a clue. I completed all the necessary paperwork for 30 days of emergency family leave and caught a flight that 26 hours later found me renting a car at my hometown airport and heading for home. It was Friday night at 6:30 when I stopped the car half a block from my house. The mid-November sun had already set and the street lights were casting an ominous glow on the surrounding neighborhood. I could see that lights were on in my living room, kitchen, and in the upstairs master suite. I could actually see my wife walk past the window a couple of times. It looked like she was getting ready to go out. I called my daughter's cell phone, and after 3 rings, she picked up and spoke softly. Daddy, is that you? Yes, baby. Don't say anything, but I'm here, just a half block from the house. Oh, Daddy, thank you. And I could hear her start to cry. Is your mom going out tonight? I'm pretty sure. She's been in her room for over an hour. I heard the shower, and now I can hear her humming. Sounds like she's pretty excited about her night. Yeah, I guess. It makes me sick, Daddy. Why is she doing this to us? I don't know, Stacy, and your mom may not know either. Let's not judge her till we know what's really going on. What are you going to do? I'm not completely sure. I guess I'll just follow them and get the lay of the land before I decide how to respond. Be careful, Daddy. Do you need to change clothes? Nope. I figure my camo fatigues will stand out enough to create a little shock and awe when the time comes. Good luck, Daddy. I love you. I love you too, Stacy, and no matter what, you and I will always be together. At 7, a black Mercedes pulled into my driveway and a tall, slender, well-dressed man climbed out of the car. I thought he'd go to the door, but he talked for a few seconds on his cell phone and the lights went out in the master suite, and a minute later the door opened and my wife stepped out onto the porch. She made sure the door locked behind her, then walked quickly toward her date with a big smile on her face. She looked stunningly beautiful, and my heart broke into a million pieces when I saw her glance back at the house to make sure Stacy wasn't watching before she gave our illustrious wife-stealing mayor a warm kiss on the mouth before he helped her into the car and they drove away. Fortunately, I was steady enough to snap a picture of the kiss with my cell phone. I followed them at a safe distance, and since the traffic was fairly light, I didn't have a problem staying with them. They drove across town and pulled into the parking lot of the Radisson Hotel. I parked half a dozen spaces away and watched them as they exited the car and entered the building. They walked close together with their arms around each other, and I snapped another photo. It was obvious their affair had been going on for a long time. They were so comfortable together. They looked for all the world like a loving married couple out for a date night. I waited until they were inside the hotel before I put on my camo hat and sunglasses and followed them. When I got inside, I couldn't see them, but wasn't concerned. I got some of the usual smiles and "thank you for your service" comments, which I acknowledged while at the same time checking out the information board that listed the current events taking place inside the hotel. One stood out: the St. James Hospital Charity Ball. It was in the third-floor ballroom, and music from the live orchestra was already filtering down to the lobby. Ignoring the bank of elevators that was shuttling well-dressed, well-heeled couples up to the ballroom, I took the stairs. Not wanting to be observed too quickly and realizing my legs needed the exercise since I had been mostly sitting on the series of long flights. When I got to the third floor, I followed the music and easily found the ballroom. I walked past the entrance slowly, glancing in, and sure enough, there they were, just inside the doorway, looking and acting like the happy couple they were, greeting friends and supporters. My wife actually glanced back and looked right at me for a second, but I saw no recognition on her face. Why would there be? As far as she knew, I was still 10,000 miles away fighting flies, sandstorms, and the Taliban. Oh, and I also noticed she wasn't wearing her wedding rings. When I got past the entrance, I went into the men's room and sat in a stall trying to plan my next moves. I was having a hard time grasping what I'd seen. I was so certain that my marriage with Kathy was as solid as any marriage could be. How stupid I felt. Likely the whole time I was in Afghanistan honoring my duty to my country, my loving wife was here at home dishonoring me, shattering our wedding vows. And what was wrong with all those people they were meeting and greeting? Didn't they know the woman that was hanging all over the mayor was married to an army officer serving overseas? I felt warm tears begin to run down my cheek, but wiped them away. There was no time for self-pity. I had a plan to formulate and carry out. At the moment, I had a much different enemy to fight than the Taliban. I stayed in the bathroom stall for half an hour, giving the festivities an ample opportunity to get into full swing before I made my way through the ballroom door. Only the few people at the entrance paid any attention to me as I edged my body close to the wall and slowly walked to an area away from the bar and food tables to a vantage point behind a pillar where I had a clear view of most of the room. I didn't have a ticket to get into the event, but my uniform had more clout than any piece of paper. The young man taking tickets actually saluted me and said, "Welcome, sir," when I came through the door. The thought ran through my mind, it's too bad my wife and her lover don't have that kind of respect for me in the uniform I wear. It took me a few minutes to locate Kathy and her date. They were dancing to a slow song, my wife's arms around his neck, her head against his chest, his hands resting possessively on her bottom. I managed to take several photos, but it took all my willpower to keep from rushing onto the floor and decking the guy and kicking his balls up into his kidneys. But that would only give me a little satisfaction and likely put me in jail. What I needed was absolute proof of their affair, and then I would find an appropriate way to exact revenge for their total disrespect of me, our daughter, and the U.S. Army. They danced another dance, then arm in arm they made their way to their table, sharing an intimate kiss and caress before they sat down. I captured it all in photos. I'd seen enough for the moment, so I made my way out to the hallway and found a seat where I could watch the ballroom doors and the elevators. As an Army officer, I had learned patience, and it paid off since another 2 hours went by before the event began to wind down, and people made their way out the door and down the elevators. It wasn't long before my wife and the mayor made their exit and stood just outside the door talking. After a minute, they smiled at each other and turned together to the bank of elevators on their left, but instead of pushing the down button, they chose the one that would take them up. It was more than weird. I was only about 15 feet from them, sitting on a bench against the wall, wearing my camo fatigues and sunglasses. My name tag clearly displayed on the front of my uniform, looking totally out of place amid the tuxedos and ball gowns, and though many other couples noticed me and smiled, or waved. My wife and her lover were so tuned into each other that they never gave me a glance as the elevator door opened and they entered, holding hands. I watched to see that their car stopped on the 11th floor and waited to see if it went up again. It didn't, and in fact it came back down to the 3rd floor where more couples were waiting to go down to the lobby. I made my way back down to the registration desk. I know this is an unusual request, but I have an important message for Mayor Connolly that I've been directed to deliver to him personally. I showed my government ID. I need to know what room he is in. The young lady at the desk looked worried. "Sir, I'm really not supposed to divulge that information." "Young lady, if it wasn't of a most urgent nature, do you really think I'd be here in my uniform?" She nodded a few times and then checked her registry. "He's in 1114. "Thank you, miss." I went to the elevators and got off on 11. The arrow pointing to rooms 1101 to 1134 went to the left. I walked past 1114, looked around to see if anyone else was in the hall, and placed my ear against the door. I could hear soft conversation, and that's all, so I went further down the hall until I found the door that led to the stairs. I figured it might lock behind me, so I placed my handkerchief between the door and the latch. Then I checked my watch, midnight. Stacy said her mother usually came home between 2 and 3, and once lately at 7, so I had a long wait. But again, my army training and patience paid off. Through the window in the door, I could see room 1114, so I wouldn't miss them when they were done with their sex fest. As I waited, I tried to keep my mind on the task at hand, but the truth is I kept imagining her a-hole lover plunging his tool deep into my wife, who had pledged to be mine alone. I could say my heart was broken, but it went far beyond that. I could feel my life spiraling down into a dark abyss where only pain and rejection and humiliation lived. I knew I had to hold it together for my daughter's sake, but the knowledge that the woman I loved more than anything else on earth and trusted with every fiber of my being was at that very moment giving her body and soul. Her love and passion to another man overwhelmed me with a tidal wave of pain. Sometime around 1:30, I stepped out of the stairwell and pressed my ear against their door. I could hear very faint sounds. It sounded like moaning, and then I distinctly heard my wife hollering, "Yes, oh God, yes. Do me, Dawn. Do me hard. Like that. You're so good." And then she screamed, a scream I'd heard many times before when she had a climax with me. With tears running down my cheeks, I returned to the stairwell. I figured they would be wrapping things up before long and leaving their love nest in the next hour. At 2, I exited the stairwell for the last time and parked myself against the wall outside their room and waited for them to come out. My cell phone was set for video, and 15 minutes later, I heard the chain being removed from the door and the click of it opening, and I began recording as they came out of their room. He had his arm protectively around her, and she was leaning against him, smiling. Kathy looked freshly scrubbed and well-drilled. Donald Connolly looked pleased with himself. They kissed briefly and turned towards the elevators, and Kathy saw me leaning against the wall. "How'd the screwing go, Kathy? It looks like you two had a nice time," I said. Kathy finally noticed me and suddenly looked like she was going to pass out. She put her hand to her heart and cried out, "Oh, Bob, no. Oh, God, please, no. This can't be happening. You weren't supposed to see this." And she fell to her knees. It took her lover a few seconds more to realize who Kathy was talking to. Then he said, "Hey man, this is really not what it looks like. She was just helping me with my new campaign." "Yeah," I said, "I can tell. I guess screwing her and killing her marriage is a new campaign tactic. I wonder how the voters are going to view that when the newspapers and TV stations find out you've been screwing an army officer's wife while he's in Afghanistan defending his country." "Wait a minute now. There was no sex involved. Tell him, Kathy." "Shove it, Mr. Mayor. Don't try to play me for a fool." I saw the kissing at my house and on the dance floor and heard the moaning and the "do me, Dawn" through the door. "You've won my wife. She's all yours, and I'm sure that you're both proud of the fact that it all took place behind my back while I was sucking sand and ducking incoming 10,000 miles from here. Effing cowards, both of you. Even my daughter knows what you've been doing." Connolly stood there stunned, not knowing how to respond, and my wife knelt in a heap on the floor sobbing. "Don't bother to come home tonight, Kathy. Spend the night with your lover. I'm going to comfort our daughter, and Monday, I'll file for divorce right after I inform the news media what kind of mayor is running this city. I have 30 days emergency leave, so stay away till I go back. Then you can decide how to carry on with the rest of your life." "Bob, please," I heard my wife say. "Please what, Kathy? Please forgive the fact that you've been screwing another man the whole time I've been deployed, maybe longer? Please don't tell our daughter what you've been doing. She already knows, Kathy. She's the one who told me to come home. I can't imagine why you've done what you've done, but you obviously have your reasons. I hope you two are in love, because all you've got is each other now." I turned and walked towards the elevator. "I'm sorry, Bob," she wailed. "Sorry about what, Kathy? Sorry I found out? Sorry I caught you screwing your new love? Sorry I screwed up your new life as the town's society queen? I watched the two of you from the second you left our house till you just now walked out of room 1114, and not once did I see a hint of you being sorry about anything. Quite the contrary, you looked as happy as any couple could possibly be with each other. Have a good life. Nah, eat shit and die, both of you." And I stepped into the elevator and pressed the lobby button. When I got home, I found Stacy waiting for me. I could tell she'd been crying. She ran to me and threw her arms around me. "Oh, Daddy, I've missed you so much. I'm so glad you're home. I missed you too, baby. More than I can tell you. Did you find them, Dad, Mom, and the mayor?" Yes, baby, I found them, and I'm sorry to say, you were right. I don't think your mom will be coming home for a while. I don't care, Daddy. She's ignored me almost ever since you've been gone. Please take me with you when you go. Honey, I've got to go back to Afghanistan in a month, and as much as I wish you could be with me, you have to stay here. I can't stay with her dad. I hate her. No, Stacy. No matter what your mother has done to me and our marriage, she is still your mother. She doesn't love me, Dad. And she wrapped her arms around me. I held her as she cried. I finally convinced Stacy to go to bed, and I secured the house, including setting the door chains just in case Kathy decided to try to come home. I had no proof that Kathy and her lover had used any of our bedrooms for their trysts, but I didn't want to take a chance, so I slept on the couch even though I wasn't sure they hadn't had sex there either. Sleep came only in spurts, 45 minutes here, half an hour there. I kept thinking about how I would handle the situation when Kathy came to claim her clothes and personal items she'd need until I left in 30 days. I could have been a nice guy and taken a hotel room, leaving the house to her, but I just couldn't find it in my heart to be that nice. She was the one that destroyed our marriage, so she could at least suffer the minor inconvenience of being displaced from her home for a month. Besides, I'm certain her lover would be happy to put her up. They've been acting like a married couple. Now they could live like one for a while, call it a trial marriage. Stacy and I both slept till noon, well, at least off and until noon. I got up first and fixed coffee, then managed to make toast and scramble eggs for us when Stacy finally came out of her room. We made small talk while we ate, and while we were rinsing the dishes and placing them in the dishwasher, the phone rang. Stacy and I looked at each other, then she answered it. Hello? Oh, hello, Mom. Yes, he's here. No, I don't think he wants to talk to you. Why would he? There was a pause while she listened. Mom, really? Dad and I both find it hard to believe you're sorry. It's not like you slipped up and kissed the guy once. You've been having an affair with your boyfriend ever since Dad deployed. Another long pause. Yes, I was the one that told Dad I needed him to come home. Pause. Mom, you've ignored me for months. The only thing that you've thought about, the only thing that's been important to you is your affair with Donald Connolly. Pause. Mom, please use your brain. Why would I tell Dad not to hurt Mayor Connolly? That evil man needs to be hurt and hurt badly for what he's done. Sorry, Mom. Not going to happen. Bye, Mom. Stacy turned to face me. She seemed scared, Dad, like she doesn't understand what's going on. It's like she thinks her cheating on you is no big deal and she can't figure out why you don't want her to come home. She doesn't understand? No big deal? Well, I promise that before I'm done with the two of them, she will understand what she's done and just how many people she's hurt by her behavior. Things were quiet around the house for most of the day. I tried to keep from thinking about what Kathy might be doing with her lover, and Stacy tried to talk to me to keep my mind occupied. We did talk about what would be best for her when I went back to Afghanistan. I thought she'd be happier staying in her home, going to her school, being with her friends, but Stacy was afraid her friends would turn against her once they learned the terrible things her mother had done. I told her that real friends would stand beside her, but she wasn't convinced. We settled things with my assurance that I'd call my mom to see if Stacy could stay with her until my deployment ended, hopefully in another 5 or 6 months. Late in the afternoon, the phone rang again. It was Kathy. I answered, but as soon as I heard Kathy say, Bob? Oh, Bob, please give me a chance to explain. I passed the phone to Stacy without saying a word. What, Mom? Stacy's voice was hard and cold, and she held the phone away from her ear so I could hear what her mother was saying. Stacy, I need to talk to your dad. I told you, Mom. He doesn't want to talk to you. But I need to explain to him. Explain what, Mom? What can you possibly tell Dad that will explain what you and Donald Connolly have been doing for the past 6 months? It's not what you think, Stacy. Yes, Mom. It is exactly what Dad and I think. You've turned your back on both of us in the worst way a woman can turn her back on her family. Shame on you, Mom. Shame on you. Stacy was hollering at her mother at this point. I could hear Kathy crying. I didn't mean to hurt anyone, Stacy. Well, you did hurt people, Mom. People who loved you more than anything in the world, and you ripped the heart out of the one man that would die for you. I hope you're proud of yourself, Mom. I hope your sordid affair was worth it, because it cost you your family, whatever that's worth to you. I just hope that one day you will wake up from this fantasy world you're living in and realize how selfish and stupid you have been. Oh, please, Stacy, I love you, and your dad. Yeah, right, Mom, and pigs fly. If you love us, you have a really strange way of showing it, and I hate to think what you'd do if you hated us. Now, do you need something, or can I go back to spending time with my dad? There was a sound of Kathy crying. I need some things, she said quietly. I need some clothes, and I need my pills. That last part came out softly. What pills would that be, Mom? Oh God, my pills, my birth control pills. Oh sure, how stupid of me. Of course you do. We couldn't have you carrying around the mayor's bastard child now, could we, Mom? That would really cramp your style, huh? Hard to neck on the dance floor when you're fat and pregnant? Well, I'll tell Dad, and I'm sure between the two of us we can manage to pack your clothes and your birth control pills. And my makeup too, Stacy. Oh right, Mom. Of course, as the town's society queen, you have to keep looking beautiful for His Royal Highness the Mayor and your adoring public. I'll make sure everything is out at the curb by 6 tonight so you can drive by and pick it up. Have a nice night, Mom. And she hung the phone up, and immediately Stacy began to cry. I put my arms around my daughter. You were kind of hard on your mom, Stacy. I know, she hiccuped. I'm not proud of it, but I'm so angry I couldn't help it. I just had to unload on her. I know, baby, I know. We'll get through this, Stacy. We won't let them win. I gave her another hug and left her to round up the things her mother needed, and I went to my office. I needed to think, and there were a lot of things I had to do in the next few days. My army training kicked in, allowing me to methodically work through everything. I was an expert at putting together battle plans, and this was in all respects a battle. The usual minutiae was a no-brainer. Find a good divorce lawyer. Cancel our joint credit cards. Get one credit card in my name and one in Stacy's. Change the beneficiary to Stacy on my life insurance and retirement plans, and move half the money in the checking and savings accounts into accounts accessible only by Stacy and me. The more difficult tasks had to do with how to deal with Mayor Connolly. He had to be punished, and punished in a way that would make him out to be nothing more than a cowardly wife-stealing scumbag. Part of the answer to that task came at 8 that evening in the form of a phone call, which I answered. Crawford residence. Robert Crawford? I didn't recognize the man's voice. That's right, Major Robert Crawford. I don't know why I threw that in, but I guess I wanted to make an early statement. Major Crawford, my name is Ray Swanson. I'm a city councilman here and a friend of Mayor Connolly. I was wondering if I could talk to you about the little misunderstanding involving you, your wife, and the mayor last night. Little misunderstanding? Is that the city's official spin on my wife and Donald Connolly's sex scandal at the Radisson till 2 this morning? Now, there's no need for that kind of language. We're just talking about a little late-night party between two consenting adults who likely had a little too much to drink and got carried away a bit. I'm sure if we just talk about it, we can straighten everything out. Nothing to talk about, Ray? Mayor Connolly has been screwing my wife for the past 6 months while I've been in Afghanistan, and last night, I caught them. I understand how troubling that is to you, Major, but I'm hoping that we can find a way to work through this for everyone's sake. Who's everyone, Ray? My only concern is for my daughter. The rest of you can go to hell. I'm sorry you feel that way, Major. The mayor is a powerful man in this community, and anything that might drag him down or make him look bad could result in some, shall we say, negative things happening to whoever caused that to happen. Are you threatening me, Ray? Just telling it like it is, Major. I personally would hate to see anything happen to you or anyone you love. Let me tell you something, Ray, and I strongly suggest you listen carefully. I've spent the last 6 months dealing with the Taliban, meeting them at every turn and filling their lives with pain and suffering. Don't ever get the idea that I will back down from a fight with a tin horn, wife-stealing scumbag mayor of a town that barely rates a dot on the state map. You and your friend the mayor have never met an adversary like me. I don't give a shit how powerful you think you are. You are messing with the devil if you take me on. That's something my soon-to-be ex-wife forgot to mention to the mayor before she got involved with him. You might have money behind you, Ray, but I have every man and woman within 100 miles who ever served in the United States Armed Forces. See, we don't like men who take advantage of our soldiers' wives while they are fighting a war overseas. In fact, we loathe and detest them. Here's a little advice, Councilman Swanson. Don't mess with me. Remove yourself as far away from Mayor Connolly as you possibly can, or you just might find yourself burned by the fire that's about to pour down on your good friend Mayor Connolly. Major, please, let's be reasonable. Surely there's an amount of money, let's say a large amount of money, that could change hands and salve over the hurt feelings caused by this unfortunate incident. There aren't any hurt feelings, Ray. There's just cold damning rage that a man like Donald Connolly could take advantage of a soldier's wife while he was fighting a war, defending his country, and there isn't enough money in Fort Knox to make that go away. The only possible way for this to end to my satisfaction is to see Connolly and my wife feel the pain they've caused my daughter and me. And you have my permission to pass that message on to both of them. Tell them to get all the sex they can in as quickly as they can, because I promise that in a very short time they may not feel like doing it anymore, at least not with each other. Major, listen, I'm in a tight spot here. When word gets out about this, a lot of heads will roll. There must be some way we can make this go away. Well, if you are sincere about wanting that to happen, it can start by Connolly publicly admitting that he has been having an affair with an army officer's wife while that officer was fighting a war in Afghanistan. Then he can follow that up by apologizing and admitting his mistake and stepping down as mayor of this community and slinking off into obscurity. He can even claim the booby prize and take my cheating wife along with him. Nothing short of that will change my mind about publicly humiliating him and bringing him to his knees. Damn, you're really serious about this, aren't you? As serious as I have ever been about anything, Ray. Now if you'll excuse me, I have to fix dinner for my daughter, and I huck up. Stacy came in from the garage. I put Mom's clothes and stuff out by the curb, and someone I didn't recognize, in a black Mercedes, stopped and picked it up. Well, for your mom's sake, let's hope that person was sent by Connolly, or there will be some mighty nice clothes for sale at Goodwill. I smiled at Stacy. I'm not sure what Goodwill would do with her birth control pills. Stacy just giggled. I packed her regular clothes, but couldn't get myself to include any of her fancy nightgowns. She has some pretty erotic teddies that I've never seen before. Just looking at them makes me sick. It's okay, Stacy. Thank you for handling that. She just nodded her head. You know you're going to have to eventually talk to her. I know, I will, when I'm ready and the time is right. The rest of the weekend went by without incident. Stacy helped me do laundry while I spent time working on my plan to bring down Mayor Connolly. Monday morning, I called a guy I knew at the local paper and arranged to meet him. John Foster met me for coffee at Denny's. He was a nice guy and a reputable reporter, and a few years back had been a sergeant in my National Guard company. What can I do for you, Major? John, I've got some information for you, and what you do with it is up to you. It may sound self-serving to you, and in a way it is. As I'm sure you know, our guard company has been deployed to Afghanistan for the past 6 months. Foster nodded. Well, what you may not know is that the whole time we've been away, Donald Connolly has been having a rather public affair with the wife of one of our soldiers. What's the soldier's name, Bob? I'd rather not say John unless it becomes absolutely necessary. I know if I was being cucked by a slime ball like Connolly, I wouldn't want the word to get out. I've seen the two of them together, very cozy. The scuttlebutt on the street is that she is separated from her husband and is going through a divorce. I guarantee you that's not the truth, John. In face, the husband had no knowledge of the affair until a week ago. No separation except the war and no divorce, at least not yet. I understand, Major, but I can't make unfounded accusations against the mayor of this town and not get sued. Do you have any proof of the affair? I do, and I showed him the pictures and video I'd taken. Of course, I'd appreciate it if the woman's face was blurred a little. Foster caught on immediately and showed some discomfort. Are you sure you want to go through with this, Bob? You know the truth will eventually come out. I shook my head sadly. I know, John, but I'll just have to deal with the shame. It's not like I was aware of it while it was going on. While Connolly was screwing my wife, I was 10,000 miles away in that miserable sandbox ducking bullets. The real shame is on Connolly. You're one of us, so you know what a breach of trust it is to take advantage of a soldier in harm's way by having an adulterous affair with his wife. Foster looked sad and nodded. Let me see what I can do. You're sure it's been going on the whole time you've been gone? Yeah, there are other people who've known about it the whole time. People who can't be identified for their protection. I transferred the photos and video to his cell phone, and we spent another 10 minutes talking about the 3 guys from our company that gave their all in the deployment. Then we shook hands and went our separate ways. My next step was to find a good divorce lawyer. I found a couple of names online, and after checking their references, chose one that looked promising. RJ Collins ESQ had an office in the downtown district, and I made an appointment for that afternoon. When I got to the office, I was surprised to discover that RJ stood for Ravenna Joy, a tomboyish-looking woman about 50 with graying hair and a no-nonsense attitude. Major Crawford, what can I do for you? I liked the way she got right down to business. I need a divorce, and I can tell you up front it's not going to be a pleasant one. She rolled her eyes at me. There's no such thing as a pleasant divorce, Major, but I'll play along. Why won't your divorce be pleasant? Because while I've been in Afghanistan the last 6 months, the mayor of this little town has been bedding my wife on a regular basis. Her eyes flew open, and she dropped the pin she was holding. You mean Connolly? I nodded yes. Major, you have my undivided attention. For the next half hour, I told her everything while she took notes, stopping me occasionally for clarification or to ask a question. So, your daughter Stacy, is she an only child? And she's 15? How does she feel about what's going on? She hates it. It's tearing her up. She doesn't want to stay with her mother when I go back to Afghanistan. Well, she's old enough that the court will take her desires into consideration, but since she can't go to war with you, is there another option beside your wife? My mom. I'll call her to see if she'll take Stacy until my deployment is up in 6 months. I'm sure she'd love to have her granddaughter stay with her for a while. We talked for the better part of an hour. I gave her the information about our finances, and she told me I need to talk with my wife to see if there was any possible way we could get past what had happened. I told her if she had seen the look in their eyes when they were together, she would understand why there was no way Kathy and I could ever put this behind us, and I wanted the papers ready to serve as soon as possible. Another week went by. This time, Kathy only called the house 5 times to talk to me. Each time I told her I would let her know where and when and cut the conversation short. On Friday, I heard from my attorney that the divorce papers were ready to be served. She just needed to know where. I told her I'd invite Kathy to my home the following Monday at 2, while Stacy was in school and she could be served at that time. I called Kathy's cell and told her I'd like to meet with her Monday at 2 at the house. She tried to keep me online to begin her obviously rehearsed explanation for her behavior, but I cut her off, telling her that she would have all the time she needed for explanations when we met. On Monday, Kathy arrived a few minutes before 2, and we sat down at the kitchen table. When I saw her, my heart did flips. She looked so beautiful. I guess having an affair with Connolly had been good for her. Coffee. No, just water, please? I know you want to have the opportunity to tell me some things, and I will give you that opportunity. Thank you, Bob. I don't want you to get caught off guard, though, so I do need to tell you before you begin that in a little while someone will show up and serve you with divorce papers. Her face lost all its color. Why, Bob? I don't want that. I didn't want you to have a 6-month affair with Donald Connolly either, so I guess neither one of us gets our way. Bob, please, if you'll just hear me out, you'll see why this happened and how we can get around it. I nodded my head. Go ahead, talk. You know, I worked on Donald's election campaign. The whole time we were thrown together at functions and on precinct walks, and we got to be friends. After you were deployed, I was lonely and depressed, and Donald bought me lunch and let me use him for a sounding board. He really helped me get through the pain of missing you. Then one night he asked me to attend a dinner event with him. He said there would be a number of very influential couple on hand, and that it might be best if I used my maiden name and left my wedding rings at home, just to keep rumors from getting started. I didn't think about it at the time, but now I see where taking my rings off was a mistake. We met so many people that night, and all of them ended up seeing me as a single woman. When did the sex start? She looked down at her hands. Not right away, though we did dance closely that night, and when he took me home, he kissed me goodnight. And you let him? I was lonely, Bob, and I just spent a romantic night with a handsome man who had stature in the community and who treated me like a princess. Treated you like a princess while your husband was fighting a war, and that gave you the right to disrespect me? No, it didn't. But I was confused. You were so far away, and I missed you so much, and I don't know, he just made me feel good. I nodded, and she went on. We went to dinner a couple of times a week after that, and to more and more events. I was starting to have such a good time with him, and it made me miss you less. The sex. She looked down at her hands again. You've been gone a month. Donald and I were going out 2 or 3 times a week. One night, after a romantic dinner, he asked me to go home with him. And you did. She nodded sadly, and I did. I felt horrible afterward. I actually got sick to my stomach and made him take me home. I told him I couldn't see him anymore, that I loved my husband, and I couldn't believe that I'd been unfaithful to you while you were fighting a war. But you changed your mind. Again, she nodded sadly. Donald left me alone for several days. Then he called me and told me how much he missed me. He said he wanted to see me again, but just as friends. He promised he would never put me in a compromising position again, that he too felt bad about what we had done. So you saw him again? Yes, that weekend he took me to a party at one of his friends' homes on the Bluffs. It was an intimate party with just 5 or 6 couples, all very important people. Sometime during the evening, the wife of a prominent doctor asked me how I'd managed to capture the heart of the town's most eligible bachelor. She caught me off guard, and I couldn't think of a plausible answer, so I just told her that I was separated from my husband and that we were getting a divorce. In a town this size, that bit of information spread like wildfire, and I felt trapped. Stacy was spending the weekend with some friends at a horse camp, and I ended up spending the weekend with Donald at his home. And the rest, as they say, is history. Yes, I am heartbroken that I hurt you and Stacy, Bob. It was the worst thing I've ever done in my life, and I'd give anything to undo it. But you can't. No, I can't. Do you love him? I don't know if I love him. I like him a lot. We have so much fun together. Yes, I remember. Sex can be wonderful fun. Is he a better lover than me? No. Oh, I don't know, it's different. Have you been staying with him since I caught you at the hotel? Yes. And still having sex with him? Yes. Are you going to marry him? I don't know. We've talked about it. The doorbell rang. I think that's for you, Kathy. And she got up and slowly walked to the door. Are you Kathy Crawford? She nodded yes and was handed a manila envelope. You've been served. For the longest time, Kathy just stood there looking out the door, holding the envelope in her hands. When she finally closed the door and turned around, I could see she was crying. So, it's really over between us, Bob? Yes, Kathy, it's really over. You made sure of that. But I love you so much. No. You love the life we had, but you threw it away. Now you get to go find another life. What about Stacy? She wants to go stay with my mom till my deployment ends. Kathy finally broke into sobs. Oh God, what have I done? The following day, there was a picture on the front page of the local newspaper with a banner headline that read, "Who is the mystery married woman coming out of a hotel room with Mayor Connolly?" Underneath the photograph of Kathy and the mayor kissing as they exited room 1114 was the caption, "Does her army husband, serving in Afghanistan, know what's going on?" The accompanying story gave details about the charity event the two were attending together, and that hotel records clearly show the mayor had booked the room for the night, and that the couple were photographed leaving that room at 2 in the morning. The story also said that there had been unsubstantiated rumors that the two had been meeting regularly for the past 6 months while the woman's husband was deployed in Afghanistan. There was more to the article, with the newspaper stating that it was their editorial right to bring the story to light due to the stature of the man involved and the nature of the offense against a soldier stationed in harm's way. The shit just hit the fan. Within minutes of the story hitting people's doorsteps, the mayor's office went into damage control, claiming that the story was a complete fabrication, that Mayor Connolly would never do anything to jeopardize anyone's marriage, let alone the marriage of a soldier serving his country overseas. They went on to state that the photograph was obviously a fake and that some unnamed sinister individuals were out to get the mayor, and that he would be holding a press conference later that afternoon to set the record straight. It all sounded good, but unfortunately over the past 6 months too many people had seen Connolly and Kathy together. They had never been careful about showing their affection for each other in public, so one by one his friends and supporters began to distance themselves from him. Several people anonymously phoned the newspaper to confess they knew for a fact that the couple had been having an affair because they'd witnessed it on more than one occasion, and they expressed outrage to discover that the woman's husband was deployed in the army while the affair was taking place. That afternoon, Mayor Connolly held his news conference, but none of his friends on the city council stood with him. In fact, the only people backing him up were his staff, and even half of them were strangely missing. The newspaper and TV stations were there, though, and they recorded the whole thing as Connolly extolled his horror at being accused of such an unthinkable thing. He assured everyone that he and the woman in question were merely acquaintances and had never done anything to bring shame on them or the woman's husband. Halfway through his little speech, Kathy pushed her way through the onlookers and went to the microphone, and to Connolly's horror told everyone, "My name is Kathy Crawford. I am the wife of Army Major Robert Crawford, and for the past 6 months I have been having an affair with Mayor Connolly." At that point, Connolly tried to shove her out of the way, claiming, "I don't know this woman. She's lying." "Yes, you do know me, you son of a bitch, and it's time we both admitted what rotten shits we really are. I am so ashamed of what I've done to my husband that I want to die, but I will not stand here and let you lie about it." She turned to face Connolly, who by now had turned red with rage and embarrassment. "Robert, you knew I was married and that my husband was in Afghanistan, and still you pursued me, and I was such an idiot that I listened to you, and now I have embarrassed and lost the only man who has ever loved me." Tears were streaming down her face. "I am so ashamed and heartbroken, and I will be sorry for the rest of my life." At that point, Kathy looked directly into the TV cameras and said, "I'm sorry, Bob. I love you," and she left through the crowd while the reporters all started barking questions at the mayor, who turned and stormed back into City Hall. I have to admit that having the world hear all that damaged my already fragile ego, but I knew the chance I was taking when I went to John Foster, my newspaper contact. The next day, when the president of the city council announced that the mayor had resigned from office and that the council would run the city until such time as a new mayoral election could be held, I should have felt satisfaction, but all I felt was a deep, empty loneliness. I missed my wife more than I ever imagined possible. My reporter friend called me that afternoon to tell me that Connolly had packed up and left town, leaving no forwarding address, and that my soon-to-be ex-wife hadn't gone with him. I spent as much time with my daughter as possible in my remaining leave, and the last week I allowed Kathy to move back into the house in Stacy, and I went to my mother's home 60 miles away where I enrolled her in school, promising that I'd be back to get her as soon as my deployment was over. The next week, I was on a plane back to Afghanistan, my heart filled with a burning anger that I planned on taking out on the enemy that was lurking in the desert. What happened to Kathy? A few weeks later, she moved in with Connolly, and they too have left town. Did Robert come back from Afghanistan? Yes, but he was critically injured and his daughter helped him get back on his foot. He lost one of his legs in an ambush. He is currently working design specialist for a large electronics firm. He lives with his daughter and occasionally speaks about the challenges that soldiers face who have been on duty outside the country. Dear listeners, please share your thoughts in the comments section below and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.